What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Realms of Metal. We got a special one today. We got my man Vincent Crowley back in the house. Vincent, welcome back to the channel.
Brother,
So,
thanks for having me.
anytime, anytime. So, this is a series that I had done a while back. I did a series called Rank the Records, and they were bands that, were special to me that I don't feel like get talked about enough. And I've been wanting to do an Acheron one for a while. And then it kind of struck me. It's like, I wonder if Vince would want to come on and do the Acheron one with me and kind of celebrate this catalog.
That's perfect timing now that the band is
That's
going to be
right.
setting off with some shows next year. So
And and
sounds good.
and this is where we're at. We're doing it. We're gonna rank the Acheron discography, all the full lengths. There's seven full lengths, and there's one that we're talking about that was listed as a full length, but Vincent confirmed it's not a full length. We'll get to that one. But one thing I gotta say is, man, your catalog is so solid. Like, yeah, every release is good. You don't have a Saint Anger or a Lud Divinum Insanus in your catalog. Like, every record is good in its own right. And it was really hard to rank these. I mean, I think we all know what's going to be number one on my list, but they're all so good. And they all have individual personalities
Yeah,
and they're great in their own way, each one. So, want to get at it?
sounds good.
All
Well,
right.
and you know, everybody's opinion's different.
Yep.
It's great that you think that. And there's people out there that think that every damn CD or album sucks. So it's all good. So let's see what good comes about.
Let's go back to 1992 in this amazing record. So here's Rites of the Black Mass. To me, this is one of the greatest death metal albums ever. Now, you're listed as the Acheron band name is listed as blackened death metal or black death metal, which I totally get. It's definitely got a black metal feel to it. But like listening to your discography, I feel like there's also a fair amount of doom in your music too. Like a track like Ave Satanis, which is one of your most celebrated tracks. That opening to Ave Satanis is doomy to me. It kind of reminds me of the Black Sabbath riff in the Black Sabbath track. Three notes.
Doom is a major influence for me. I mean, Black Sabbath is one of my favorite bands, so that's obviously inspired. The problem with like labeling, now you have to remember death metal, even black metal, that those words were kind of just thrown around, and anything that was a little bit different, Venom to me was like black metal. I always thought black metal was talking about satanic shit, death metal was talking about death or whatever, and so it morphed into something else. If you listen to the Acheron demos, I wasn't singing then.
Right.
We had a singer that was very much black metal sounding like Corthon. We had music that sounded more like Venom or Bathory type stuff. And when Rites came about, uh, the demo we recorded, our singer had got arrested, and I had to take over. And I was like, "Fuck, I don't sing," and I kind of was like mimicking him on the demo. And then when I moved, I started to sing more and I started to get what felt good to me. And that's how I ended up with the style I had for the Rites of the Black Mass album.
Your vocal style is gruff, but yet understandable. Like you can definitely hear what you're saying in the songs, which I like. I like to hear what the artists are singing about.
And some albums they're a little bit rougher and deeper, and some they're more understandable. It just really depends on the mood when I'm in the studio. I At recent years I prefer stuff that's heavy, has a heaviness to it, but very understandable.
Right.
And you know,
Now, for all these records, you're doing bass and vocals on everyone, and I think a couple of them you even contribute some like rhythm guitar parts.
what happened was when we when I was in after we did the Rites of the Black Mass demo, everybody wanted to move to Florida. So me and the bass player moved to Florida, and the drummer Jim Strauss, who's in Sathnas now, he called me. He's basically like, "Dude, I can't move," and I was like, "What the fuck? It's you guys' idea. Why the fuck am I here then?" And within like a couple weeks, the bass player, I came home, the doors unlocked, his shit's gone, and I'm like, "Wow, fucking everybody's gone now." It was their idea to come to Florida, and I was like, so I end up staying, and at that point, guitar was starting to evolve. I grew up with the Creators and the Kerry Kings, and you know what I mean, where it was like a lot of chaos and
Hmm.
but Chuck and James Murphy, there was like more melodic stuff coming out, but there was still heavy music, and I really liked that. So I wanted to start playing with some people that were better guitarists than me. So I switched over to bass, and it just seemed appropriate anyway. Because I'm 6'3", so a bass looks more appropriate than a guitar on me.
Yep.
And I kind of like worked with that. Uh, Acheron ended up breaking up, and me and Pete Slate, who's in Druid Lord, uh, he we did a band called Mythos, and we wrote a bunch of songs, and then Turbo Music from Germany contacted me like several months later and was like, "Hey, we want to put out an Acheron album." And I was like, "Well, the band's not around anymore." And they're like, "Well, talk to see if you can get a lineup if you want to do it." So I talked to the guys in Mythos, and we were like, "Okay, we haven't gone too far. We had about half a dozen songs, but we were like, this is a record deal, so we'll see how this goes." So we make a deal, and they were like, "We want to take you to Morrisound where everybody's doing their shit." And back then in Florida, you go to Morrisound, that was like the chosen place to
The
go.
place.
Yeah. And to work with Scott Burns, that was another one.
Hmm.
Difference was the label wanted to use some of the tracks from the demo and then re-record some other shit, but use like the drums and like the rhythm guitar,
Hmm.
and then redo everything else there and use Scott to engineer it. So I was like, I really wanted to redo everything, but it was a deal, and that's what we were looking for. So we end up agreeing. We went in there, and I think when we recorded there under those conditions, the sound of the demo made our album sound different than all the other albums that were coming out from Morrisound, which people started to not like because they said it was the same exact sound every album,
Hmm.
which there was some similar stuff. I think there's a lot of differences within albums, and I didn't really get why a lot of people hated it, but I understood, trying to get different sounds.
To me,
So
like the Morbid Angel sound, the Nocturnus sound, and like the Atheist sound are very similar. That guitar tone.
so I went in the studio and redid the vocals, the bass, the lead guitar, and we had some issues with the drum sound. Scott worked on it, and some people always ask me, they're like going, "How come I can't tune exactly on the album when I go to play this?" And the reason being is I was talking with Scott, and I go, we gotta make this sound a little bit different than the fucking demo. It's just I don't want just 2.0 bullshit. So our idea was we slowed the record down just a little bit, which is not a true tunage on the album.
Mhm.
So those people that are trying to tune it to D and like, hey, this isn't fucking exactly D. It's like, well, now you know why.
Yeah,
It was purposely done that way.
right.
And another interesting thing about that album is when we were recording, my old band Nocturnus was in the studio next to us recording their second album, Thresholds.
Hmm.
So uh, when I was laying the vocals down, I was talking to Mike Browning, and I was like, "Man, you want to fucking do some backups on Ave Satanas?" And I had this part in Cursed Nazarene where it's in the middle of the album. It's like a demon voice, and Mike does that. He came over and fucking did some stuff, and it was a good time.
That's
And
great.
I guess the big thing about that album though is a lot of people that just kind of look through it and see if it's another album. That was actually 100% a real satanic album. Everybody involved, the artist was a Satanist. Peter Gilmore, who did the intros, was a Satanist, and today is the high priest of the Church of Satan. Me being a Satanist, it is the complete black mass set to music from beginning to end.
I didn't
It's
know
not
that until, not that long ago. Like I knew that they were, passages or spoken rituals or something, but I didn't know that that's what that was until not that long ago, until I heard you say it.
actually probably got more hype with the Christian community than we did the metal community, because I think there's been a lot of bands that use Satan as a reference, or the satanic imagery, but we were actually using the manuscripts, the actual texts of the fucking the rite, and those who knew what we were doing were like, holy fuck, they're not just using it as a gimmick. And to this day, I don't think a lot of people give us credit for that. And we were pretty much the first band to ever do that. And I don't
Fully
think
agree.
even a rock band, because Coven did a recorded Black Mass on their album, and that was like, it was in the 60s, and it was just a recording. There was no music to it. This was actually everything from beginning to end set to music.
Yep. I actually appreciate those parts a lot more now, those spoken parts, than I did like when I was a kid, because I just didn't know back then.
And I we got reviews that were like, what are these fucking intros on every song? They're annoying, just skip this shit, get to the songs.
Right.
But it wasn't something created just for the songs. It was the whole experience. Like if you sit down, have the candles lit, you're kind of can take your mind and go through that mass yourself.
Right. So the lineup on Rites of the Black Mass was yourself, Peter Slate on guitar, and Jim Strauss on drums.
Right.
Now, I think maybe it was the original pressing, there was a back cover of three guys, and there was a guy that was on the back that was not Jim Strauss. I think it was a guy named Robert Orr. How did he
Right.
get on that picture on that cover for that record?
Well, he was supposed to be playing on the album. He was in Mythos with me and Pete, and that didn't manifest. And we just, Jim was in Pennsylvania, so we couldn't get a picture with him. So we just used that one.
Gotcha.
And if you want to see a more ridiculous one, there's a picture on the US version of JL America. And there's another guy, and I don't know what the hell kind of shit we were wearing on that fucking thing. His name was Scott. God, it's been so long, but he was the drummer we were playing with at that time.
Right.
And the label, without even asking, they used that uh, band photo that was used as a promo on it. And yeah, JL America did a real generic job for that release in the States. But yeah, there was two drummers featured on pictures on that album that didn't appear on
Yeah, that
it.
was just a question that I had. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? He wasn't drummer on this album. So,
Right, right.
working with Scott Burns. That was the only time you ever worked with Scott Burns, and how was that? I mean, what kind of guy was he? Easy to work with? What can you say about him?
That was a really great guy. I mean, he liked metal. He enjoyed making it, and uh, my lack of that was my first actual album, so I been to smaller studios, but I never been to something big. So it was a learning process, and he guided everybody through it really well. And considering what he started with and how he ended up, Is Rights a perfect album? No. Is there problems in it? Here and there, I hear shit, but for what it started out as a demo, he did a phenomenal job, and he to me he made it sound the best anybody could have made that sound.
Everything that guy touched was gold back then. Like really.
Yeah, for sure. But he was a really nice guy, and he in fact when we were recording, he even contacted like was a road runner, a road racer, Monty Connor, and was like saying how he liked the album and trying to give us a boost and of course Monty was like, we already got Deicide. It's like, well, we're not Deicide, but
Yeah,
I thought it was actually pretty cool that he stepped up and at least tried to put at least a good word in for us and
that is
shit.
very cool. So the cover art, all the cover arts on all the first records, at least in the 90s, were done by a guy named Diabolus Rex. How did you come across that guy and meet him?
He was a member of the Church of Satan, and he was also friends with Peter Gilmore. He also wanted to work with a real satanic band. So when Peter introduced me, we started talking, became friends, started communicating, and it was like this little network. And that cover actually, the saw blade with the pentagram and the 666. He's almost like an HR Geiger. He has a studio that's insane. That's actually like I think a 5 or 6 foot fucking real saw blade. That's a picture of that.
Is it really?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
amazing. Be
yeah.
cool to hang
So
on your wall to get the real thing, put it up on the wall.
yeah, and that actually, I forget what there was a book of like album covers that were the best album covers, and that was actually on one of these books I saw, and that's definitely unique, and it's become very iconic.
Amazing record, man. So, Rights of the Black Mass, 1992. There you have it. So let's go to 1994 and Lex Talionis. So this record was released on Lethal Records 1994. Yourself on bass and vocals. Now you had a different lineup here. You had Vincent Breeding on guitar and Mike Browning on drums on this one.
And one track, if I don't know if that has the original band photo in it, but we at that point I was thinking that I was going to just do vocals after we recorded it or when we were getting ready to, and we had a guy named Troy Heffern play bass on one song. So there's one song on that album I didn't play on, and that was
Okay,
INRI, False Prophet.
gotcha.
But of course, I went back to the evil fucking bass, and that didn't last. But
Uh, our, Go ahead.
we actually recorded that in two places too. It was we got a deal with Lethal Records, and we had put out the Satanic Victory EP previously on that label. They wanted us to come to Vienna and in Austria to record. Mike had a job and he couldn't take off a couple weeks just to go over there, and so what we did was we recorded the drums and the bass at Audio Lab where we recorded the Satanic Victory album. And then myself and Vincent Breeding flew over to Vienna, Austria to record the rest of the stuff. And that was at, I got my little notes here, the Vienna Power Station.
Gotcha.
And we were there for a couple weeks and very cool situation. It was like studio was made underground in an old World War II bunker.
Whoa, that sounds
Yeah, they
cool.
had like to get into the actual studio, they had almost like the submarine doors that you had to turn
Oh, yeah, that's pretty
the
cool actually.
it was very, very cool experience. And getting to record an album out of the country, that's definitely something to put in the experience book.
Now, in the notes, it has produced by Mika Zastupel. Am I pronouncing that right?
honestly, I don't remember the guy's name. The guy who owned the label was with us pretty much the whole time, and yeah, I do like the guy spoke English, but it was like kind of translating all the stuff too.
Right.
Uh, it was an interesting experience. The only thing about that album is when Mike Browning got back in the band. I was part of the original Nocturnus lineup.
Right.
We had tons of songs. So when Mike came back in the band, instead of writing new songs, we decided to dip back into the old stuff and use them on the album and
Right.
work on it,
Right.
which gave them even more of an old school feel because you think about it, those were half the album was tunes that were written pre 87. So that's why that style, there's some people that like that better than anything just because of the old style. Um, but lyrically and stuff, I wrote that when I was younger, so I'm not the biggest fan of all the stuff, but
To
it is
me,
what it is, and it
I think
represents.
I think this was a had a little bit edgier of a guitar tone than Rites did, just to my ears.
Yeah.
And like tracks like Slaughterization for Satan has, I love the riff in that. Like that's one of my favorite tracks that you've ever done, along with the Entity. I think is a super killer track that's on here. Like I think they're two of the best tracks you ever did.
The stuff with the Lex Talionis, uh, and even the Satanic Victory when we got Vincent Breeding. We got Vincent Breeding from a rock band. He had no connection with extreme metal before us.
Like a hair metal band or a hair rock band, like that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, well, at first he was previously in one, and then they went to more like this vampire image rock. And Mike actually bumped into him at a store, and he had these belt that had crucifixes upside down all around him.
Yeah.
And he started talking to him, and he came back to practice. He goes, "I think I might have somebody who might had the same mentality of us," and we talked to him, and he kind of resonated with us with the mentality, and it just worked out. But I think that gave us some rock influence on some, because some of those leads are very metal rockish,
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
and so that that era was definitely a different sound for us.
So there you go, Lex Talionis. That was the second full length from 1994. We're gonna go to 1995, and we got a little bit of a discrepancy here. If you go on the Metal Archives, Hail Victory is listed as a full length, but you heard it right. You'll hear it right from the man himself. It's not a full length. It's an EP.
It was like many of the um, labels I've dealt with. Lethal fucked us over, and when they did, we had a label that was interested in putting it out here, so we released it as Hail Victory over here, and we basically added intros from Peter Gilmore, and then we added two extra songs that were also featured on the All Exil 7-inch.
Right.
So technically, that's just a long extended version of the EP.
Gotcha. There you have it. Hail Victory is an EP, not a full length. So let's go to 1996 and let's go to Anti God, Antichrist.
Okay, so that was a resurgence of the band. We had done Lex Talionis. Some shit went down. I had to take some time off, and when we thought pretty much that was in with the band. When I decided to start doing stuff again, start writing, I was like, everybody was all doing other things, so I had to revamp the band. I had become friends with a guy named John Scott who played keyboards,
Mhm.
and we were talking about maybe working together. And when I said I was putting Acheron back together, I had this idea for the new stuff to have that keyboard element to give it a different vibe than the old stuff. Um, he said, I know these two guys that just moved to Orlando from Missouri. You might want to check them out. So I took a trip with him to Orlando and met Michael Estes on guitar and a gentleman named Richard Christie on drums, which later was part of Death and Iced Earth. And
Now Howard Stern.
yes, he's on Howard Stern now. I heard them both play and I was like, what in the fuck? Where did you guys come from? You know, it's like, I mean, amazing musicians. And um, I said, you're definitely want to, if you want to play with us, let's do this shit. And we started working on the material for Anti God, and we got that ready, went back into Audio Lab again, but this time we did the whole album there, didn't go anywhere else. And yeah, it was a very interesting experience, you know, using keyboards for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Michael is such an amazing guitarist. He was not just a shredder, he was just somebody that really had this feeling when he did the leads.
He's got very melodic lead playing. I was gonna mention
Yeah,
that. Like his leads were really memorable and they stand out on those tracks.
yeah. And with Richard, I mean, I remember going over the songs and going, Richard, that's fucking amazing, but you don't have to be all over the place at all times because he was like, he's like everywhere,
Yeah.
and he understood and fucking did some solid stuff. And I remember in Blessed by Damnation, I said something like, you know, the middle part's supposed to have double bass, and he goes, well, I got double bass in this one part. What do you want in the other part? And I go, I don't know. What do you think fits? And he comes up with that speedy double bass that I never heard anybody use. Well, I've heard people use it, but not like within my stuff. And I was like, fuck yeah, man, just keep that shit. And it was just a great experience. And that album really lit a fire under our asses. It became the next popular album compared to like Rites, and it got a lot of momentum
Yeah.
for sure.
Fuck the Ways of Christ ended up becoming another one of your signature tracks.
That's like one of those songs that if you do a fucking show, you have to play it. That's
Right.
just, and it's
Funny,
funny because it's not one of my favorite songs.
it's not real.
Yeah.
A funny story about that track a couple weeks ago. I was out blowing leaves and I had that song on and that line that comes on, love thy neighbor is a fuck it. Who comes over, starts walking over the new neighbors. I'm like,
Nice.
hey, how you doing? If you guys only knew.
Well, you know, it's funny. I wrote that song, and when the band had split up, Mike Browning was doing a couple projects with other people, and I said, "Hey, man, do you mind like helping me out working out an idea with a song?" He's like, "Yeah, come on over, we'll jam." And originally, that first riff was supposed to be blast. It was supposed to, and Mike goes, I could do it, but I saw it sounds more solid with double bass. And I go, well, let's try it. And I was like, fuck yeah. So even though Mike didn't play on it, Mike actually had the idea with the double bass instead of the blast beat on that shit. So, and that was good because Acheron never really was a full blast. We had blast here and there, but you know, it was more the double bass stuff that was our stuff.
Cover art again, Diabolus Rex.
Yep.
I have it engineered by a guy named Greg Marchak, who actually he's passed. Do you have any
Yes.
memories of that guy working with him?
He actually was the guy who worked on Satanic Victory. He worked on Lex Talionis. Um, he worked on an album after this we'll talk about. Um, yeah, he was a rock guy, but he liked metal too. But he was weird.
Yeah.
Did a lot of cocaine. That's he would he would take cigarette breaks and come back like he was fucking ready to do aerobics. And we those were the days where we fucking were in the studio for like fucking 13, 14 fucking hours.
Really? Yeah.
And yeah, and it was brutal time. But he actually worked, I think it was in Boston, because he told me stories that like he worked in a studio that I guess Steven Tyler was in, and he actually bought heroin for him for the studio.
Oh, really?
So I was like, it's like he would say weird stories, but he definitely wasn't part of our scene. He was just an engineer, basically.
Gotcha. So there you have it, man. Anti-God, Antichrist, 1996. So let's go to 1998. And here's, I think, is the most unique record in your catalog. I really do. Like, I remember hearing this for the first time, and that's Those Who Have Risen. This had a much different feel than anything you've done up to that point. I know you used keyboards in the last one, but the keyboards really stand out on this one.
Yeah.
So
Was
was that the
this was
mindset going in? I wanted to do more keyboard heavy record, or were you going for a feeling?
Yeah. So this album, we return to the conceptual topic because there's a an organization called the Temple of the Vampire, and their whole idea is like with the occult and vampirism being draining people of their energy, their life force, and they have rituals. And I actually went through a lot of their teachings. I wanted to experience what they did. I got even like made a priest in the Temple of the Vampire. So I kind of felt everything I was writing. So when I was writing, I could be authentic about it.
Right.
Uh, so there's a lot of things with astral planes and emotion and stuff. And I thought this album wasn't supposed to be like a heavy ass album. It was more supposed to be like atmospheric
Definitely is.
and doomy in a lot of ways too. There's definitely some doom stuff in there.
The
Uh,
Calling, I think, is
yeah,
super doomy.
yeah. So this was a would be to me the Acheron experimental album because there was no other way I thought to do it. You know, I look back at it now and I always went, man, if I had the real steel, I would love to fucking remix it guitar heavy to see what it would give. But then I thought that's not the way it was supposed to be done.
Right.
So leave it the way it is and shit. So, but yeah, that was very experimental. We were lucky. We had David Vincent and George Fisher, Corpse Grinder,
Hmm.
both made guest appearances. Morbid Angel practiced right next to us in the people storage uh, place. And I was talking to David. I was like, hey, do you mind, doing some vocals? And I wanted to do his uh, just spoken kind of words and was it Final Harvest and Immortal Sigil.
Hmm.
And he came over and did the vocals, very cool. And then George came and they had just I remember because they just did some shows with Marduk over in Europe. And George is like a kid. He fucking when he experiences shit, he loves it. He loves fucking metal. And he was just telling us all the stuff. And that engineer you mentioned,
Yeah.
we were waiting for him for like fucking almost 2 hours. I'm calling the fuck, and that dude, I'm getting like, I was on the fucking yelling, leaving messages because it's like George is there to fucking lay shit down,
Yeah.
and this guy pulls off, and I start fucking like yelling at him, and this fucker just takes off. So I have to get a call with the owner and get rescheduled. And I thought, oh, that's great. George ain't gonna do it. Yeah, fucking George comes back another time and
Does he really?
fucking
Yeah.
no fucking problem. And he did like, let me look at all the notes on this. George did secondary vocals on Life Force. He did some vocals on Necromancy and Communion, and he also did vocals on The Calling.
Yeah.
And great experience. I always like I mentioned before, I met George at an Acheron show for Rites of the Black Mass when right before the album came out. Motherfucker was up front flinging his hair around, singing lyrics back to me that I don't know how the fuck he knew them because they only had the demo out.
Right.
But you know,
Awesome.
very cool guys.
And you had Michael Estes return for this record. You had a guy named Ben Meyer on second guitar, and
Yes, from Nasty Savage.
yep, and then
And
Tony Laureano on drums.
yep. So to go back on to talk about the lineup, um, Michael returns. One thing I will tell you right now, and if you're a guitar player and you've heard the leads on that, Michael had every fucking lead written out on that album. I don't know how the fuck he did it, but I mean, he had a book this thick of shit, and he'd be like, "I gotta redo it. I missed a note a little." I'm like, "How the fuck do you know you missed a note at 100 miles an hour?" It's perfectionist.
Right.
Ben was the original guitarist of Nasty Savage who did a full circle because he was the first person to really give me guitar lessons and push me to fucking pursue metal. So it was like very cool to bring him in, and he did some touring with us before we did the album, then make a guest appearance on it. And Tony, God, he's been on everything. He's been in
Angel
Angel
Corpse.
Nile. He
Yeah.
toured with Demu Borgir. He fucking uh God, it's endless, all the bands he'd done. And I remember when he did that, I had written all the songs and did a demo. And I said, hey, here are all the songs I just recorded on a tape. And Tony was like recording, he was delivering pizzas. Then a week, he just played that and he came in the studio. We rehearsed. I don't even know if we rehearsed twice as a whole band. And we did that fucking album. And
Wow.
it was just magical the way it came out. And he added so fucking much. Everybody did. And John Scott, who played keyboards, which he had passed away, later on, but he did a phenomenal job. And I think the mixture just gave that whole album a different journey.
This record has a feel like no other like in your catalog, at least to me. And when it comes to metal records in general, I put this like right at the top with like records that have a feel. Like I always love records like that, and this definitely fits that bill.
Yeah. Going back to vocals again, if you compare it to Anti-God, my vocals got deeper on that one, and it wasn't calculated. I remember laying down the vocals, and they're like, "Going, are you purposely trying to be deeper?" And I'm like, "That's just the way I feel when I'm in a fucking studio. Whatever comes out naturally, that's what I go with, So
It's a amazing record.
I appreciate it.
So let's go to now. We're gonna go from 1998 to 2003, and the record is Rebirth, Metamorphosing into Godhood. Now, this really was kind of a rebirth for the band because I feel like I know you've talked about it before. Your sound definitely got more aggressive on this record going forward. So, was that intentionally done? You wanted to maybe sound a little bit different, be a little bit more aggressive?
Yeah, well, I originally I left Florida, and I again Acheron, like I mentioned to you in private, it's like the mafia. It always drags me back in. I I moved up to Ohio, and I thought I'm going to do a different project. So that's why I did the Wolf and Society, and I started to play with um, Kyle Severn, who played drums and Incantation. He was actually living up there at the time, so we started to do a weekly jam sessions and just work on stuff. And I had songs written because I had a concept album, which will be linked later. This whole band is like a puzzle. I had a big part of a concept album written, and I thought, well, I can just take that one and do it for the Wolf and Society. I'll take some of these songs.
Mm-hmm.
So I we started to work on that, and we end up recording the Wolf Society um, EP. But to get past that, after that, that didn't work out. it didn't manifest into anything more. And I got an offer. Dark Funeral. Aramon was a part of Wolf Society, Lord Aramon. So he had contacted me. He goes, "Hey, Dark Funeral's doing a tour in Mexico." He goes, "Can you get Acheron back together? You want to do it with us?" So I'm like, "Well, let me talk to the guys." And um, I was kind of playing with my friend of mine that played keyboards, and we were just messing around with old Acheron, stuff. And I said, "Hey, do you want to do a tour?" He's like, "Oh, fuck yeah." Named Aaron Warner. And so I called up Michael and said, "Hey, you be into doing this?" And Michael was all for it. And he goes, "Well, let me ask Richard." He goes, I can't remember if it was Death or Iced Earth, whichever band was like he was in at that time.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "Let me see if he's doing anything." And he was off. And Richard's like, "Yeah, I'll do the tour with you." So we all went out with Dark Funeral, had a fucking blast. And that just lit the fire again to start doing the band.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Richard was in another band. And what we end up doing is getting Kyle from the Wolfen Society, since Kyle was up here. We worked on a demo called Zumale, and that was the precursor of Rebirth.
Right.
Um, when we went to do the album, we decided the keyboards was not the direction we were going. My mind state, I moved from a place that I was very comfortable in to a place I didn't like, and I wasn't too fond of the way the scene was. So I had a lot of anger issues. And in 2000, I quit the Church of Satan. Some drama happened there. I had anger issues. So this album was going to be my release of that.
Right.
And to be truthful, Kyle Severn, he was a big, because he's an incantation. He's more into the more in your face stuff. So we just pushed each other to do that. And, Michael Estes came up, stayed with me for a few months. We worked on the music, got that down, and then we went in and recorded it. And man, it, we went to Mars recording compound with Bill Korecki.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyle had recorded there with Incantation before. And Bill knew death metal. Bill knew exactly how to fucking, work with us. And turned out great. Worked well. It came out aggressive. Church of One was my kind of fuck off to the organized satanic churches too. It's like I didn't need anybody anymore. I had myself.
Yep.
So there's a lot of symbolic, metaphoric songs on that album. That's,
Mm-hmm.
Some people might know what it's about, some people don't. But yeah, there was a lot of fucking meaning to that album, which meant a lot. And the cover, we had to get a slipcase because that got banned in some places.
Now the track Zomali, like I tried to look and see if I could figure out a meaning for that. Like, what does that exactly mean? The title of that track?
That's a good question because no one's going to find it. It
I
was,
couldn't find it.
I uh, doing rituals and stuff. You work with different oracles and stuff. I I always had this dark connection with something. What I don't know if it's just a energy, whatever. It just always had this kind of link with something. And I remember I did a ritual and I tried to spell it out with an oracle, and that came out with that spelling. And I tried to figure it out, and it's like I came up with like, now Alexander, this is just me coming up with shit.
Yeah.
Like the X and the Y could be chromosomes for male or female. Alpha or Zamale, Omega, Alpha, like the balance of things. I know it could be digging for shit, but that's what I got out of it.
I
It's
don't
like
know.
it's like a, a, a balanced force that is could be demonic, could be mental, could be whatever. But
This is
that
the
was
kind of
always
this is the
my
kind of stuff I love to hear because you're you're the artist. You're creating this stuff, you know. So that these are the kind of stories that I like to hear.
I always say that, it's always been that on my shoulder. It's always been lurking, and that's just a name I gave to that.
Right. That's pretty cool. Um, so yeah, this came out in 2003, Rebirth. So, like I said, kind of to me, it was kind of like a rebirth for Acheron too, sound wise.
And Timo Wars, he started doing the artwork for us at that time, and he
Yep.
still does artwork. And the whole, if you look at the cover, the three people in the cloaks are supposed to be the band.
Yeah.
The baby's the fucking album. There's so much symbolic stuff to it. It's not just like some people go, "Oh, that's just a crude cover." If you take it that way, but it was actually more meaning to it than, yeah, exactly.
Pretty awesome. Alrighty, so let's jump to 2009. So we go to 2003 to 2009. Any particular reason why there was a bigger gap between these records?
I blame that era of Acheron. Uh, was a very indulgent. It was a lot of partying, a lot of fucking just chaos and mayhem. And I mean, the early days, I was more focused on just dealing with the band and the whole satanic element of it. I was a spokesperson for, the Church of Satan and other stuff. Now, all that's off my shoulders, and I have a lot of time on my hands and some mayhem to cause. So, uh, we worked on stuff. We'd play shows here and there and stuff, but there was not the pounding of regular practices and stuff. And,
Right.
Kyle was doing incantation too. So we couldn't practice every month or every week or anything like that. So we just here and there and made do with what we had. But we didn't also like limit and give a shit either. We put together stuff with the time we had and tried to make it exactly the way we wanted it.
Gotcha. So just getting back, I failed to mention the record. 2009 is Final Conflict, Last Days of God. You
Mm-hmm.
had Kyle returning on drums for this one,
Mm-hmm.
and Michael was out. So you had two other guitar players in this. You had Max Otworth and Ash Thomas. How did Michael end up leaving, and you ended up with these two other guitar players?
After when Michael stayed with me, Michael always kind of had problems dealing with people. I mean, there's awkwardness, and he drank a lot. Now, when he stayed with me, and I'm not shitting you, we had a big ass fucking bar of fucking alcohol. He would drink a whole bottle of whiskey every fucking day.
Really? Yeah.
Every day. And he called the power slam. And when he drank too much, he just didn't give a fuck about what he did, and it's like luckily, he never did anything to me. But when we go out or anything, some of the shit he did with people or some of the shit he would talk about, and like he knew jujitsu, and there'd be times I will be hanging drinking, all of a sudden he's like choking somebody out on the fucking floor, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So we just had to get past that. I was
Right.
like, we can't handle it. And unfortunately, Michael passed away, and I believe it had to do with his like, kidneys. So, you know, he contributed so much to the band, but yeah, we had to find new people for that. And that's when we found Max, who was a youngin. He was a really youngin. And he stepped up. And then we were working with Ash Thomas, who was always also in the band Estuary.
Hmm.
And he was helping out, and we did the album with those guys.
Yep. He's in Shed the Skin too, right? With Kyle,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Now, I think I had asked you about Michael Estes another conversation we talked about him. That guy, when I look at pictures of that guy, I know he passed away and rest in peace. That guy always looked like he was possessed by a demon to me. Like he had that look, like he was just I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't explain it.
yeah. He was on a different plane. Like I said, I went to different countries with him. I played shows, recorded. Um, yeah, he went into some dark places. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why. I mean, to be such a phenomenal artist, maybe that's why. He yeah, during that era. I mean, this is again when we did this album. It's almost like starting over again because Michael's signature sound was a part of that whole anti-God and
hmm
moving forward. And we had to do something else now.
As great as Michael was, I love the guitar tone on this record. I think it's edgy. I think it's in your face. I think the songwriting is really good on it. The track "I Am Heathen" has always been one of my favorites. You guys did a video for that. Was that the first video you did for Acheron?
That's the very first one.
It was okay.
And we always talk about it. I think it's on there. We did like a little documentary. Actually, when that first came out, it came with a DVD that was like the making of the album. I remember I brought that "I Am Heathen" to the table, and we me and Kyle worked it out, and I was like, I don't know about this fucking song. It's like I like catchy, but it's like almost
A
does this
little bit.
sound too catchy? And he's like, I mean, yeah, it's not fucking brutal, but I mean, it's a good song. And I was like, yeah, but we got songs like Godless and The Apocalypse. They go, and then he kind of was like, you go censor your own self. And he goes, yeah, I mean, fuck it, we'll see how it goes. And then after that, hearing how people liked it, that's why we decided to do the video. And fuck, that became a very popular song. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some cult motherfuckers that hate that fucking song.
Do they really? Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're like, why in the fuck did you do that? And it's like,
Is that because they felt it was more like a commercial track than what you've been doing? Did you
yeah,
feel that way in the band?
yeah, it seemed like, but Acheron, I thought I always liked catchy fucking hook songs. Yeah, that was a little bit more, but I don't think it was, we're not playing goddamn
No.
fucking Poison or
It's
something.
not a
Or
I mean, it's not a commercial track. It might have been commercial for what you had done up to that point, but it's definitely not a commercial sounding track. It's still, heavy and brutal as fuck. It's just sort of catchy. That riff in the beginning is just catchy, catches your ear.
in that album, like a lot of the albums we do, I try to make them like a roller coaster. It's like you have a fast, a slow, a real slow, mid pace, and that's been the whole um, strategy since the beginning. And when I did the interview with Revok from Morton Red, he does the same thing. And I when he mentioned that with his album, I'm like going, yeah, that's some people don't get that. It's like I don't want to hear fucking just like blast, blah, 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 and then you hit a slow song and then blah 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 blah. It's like I want a little bit of variety and
I,
stuff.
I agree. I agree. When that track comes on and I'm in the car, I fucking lose my voice because I have to sing it as loud as I can. It's just one of those tracks that I have to sing every time it comes on, and always been one of my favorite of yours.
That's again, vocally that one I when I went to studio, it was definitely not as heavy. And I think that was one of the things too with I Am Heathen, because you understood the lyrics, and I was definitely more audio available to your understanding, for that stuff. But it fit the album. And that's the album that I started writing in Florida back before 2000. And it was supposed to be a Wolfen Society. So that's carried over. We revamped songs. We did a couple songs that were on we did Blood Oath that was on the Wolfen Society EP. Did a new version of it and just kind of didn't use some of the songs Wolfen did that we were going to use and
Mhm.
then redid stuff.
Right.
That again is a concept album. It's about an occultic elitist organization that has maintained the order of control of religion and stuff for all the years, and they're basically letting all the Abrahamic religions come against each other and destroy themselves while they sit back and watch the destruction of the world and take over.
Gotcha.
So
Really cool. Great artwork again. Timo Wara is back for this one.
yes.
Yeah, amazing. Final Conflict. So let's go to the last full length. This came out in my sheet here. 2014. And that's the latest Acheron record, Cult des Hasses, which means Cult of Hate. Um, the lineup on this one was Art Taylor on guitar, Kyle back on drums.
And we did have a guest lead guitarist, Richter Ravensbrock, who is also in the Electric Hellfire Club and was also in Coven. So
This is such a strong record. This is, one of my favorite records of yours. I think the songwriting is so strong all the way through this record. I really do. I mean, every song really. You've got this was mixed and mastered by Dan Swano. Now that guy's a legend. How'd you end up hooking up with Dan Swano?
what happened is, things started to change in the music industry. People started to do more home recordings and stuff. So when we went to Bill Korecki at Mars, he was like, "Man, I guess I'm not doing it anymore." So we're like, "Fuck, who are we gonna fucking get?" So there was a band in Cleveland called Soulless, and you know, David Johnson, who was a member of the band, and he had a studio in his basement of his house. And Kyle goes, "I've heard some of his work. He actually did, I think, one of the Midnight albums, the second one."
Okay.
So he goes, "If we can get some tracking there and see if somebody can like mix and master, maybe that will work." So we talked to the label, who put me in contact with Dan Swano, went back and forth, kind of like said, "This is what we want to do," gave us a price. Dan Swano ain't cheap, but it's worth it. We recorded at David's studio, which was called Bad Back Studios at the time. And when we were done, we sent the Unisound to Dan Swano, and he mixed and mastered it. And holy fuck, it was
Sounds amazing.
amazing. And there was a lot. See, I can say this a decade later because the one thing is when you do a new album, people always say that's my fucking favorite album. I've done it every fucking album, and I know everybody I know does that shit. Um, After a decade, that is absolutely my favorite fucking Acheron album.
Is it really yet?
That's the one I'm proudest of. I think there could have been stuff done better. But wow, for us to record in the basement, the basic tracks, and then have somebody mix it into something. Because again, this home studio shit's starting to become popular now.
Yep.
I'm used to going to a regular fucking studio. To me, it was kind of hard to get a vibe when you're fucking seeing CDs of someone's stuff on the wall, and you know what I mean. You're seeing like everyday shit in the room,
Mm-hmm.
but we made it work, and yeah, fucking Dan took it to a different level, and Art was gonna do. We got Richter to do the second guitar because there's a lot of solos on that, and you know, the only problem is Richard did a good job, but he did everything like off the cuff. It was just kind of like so. Art did a lot of stuff off the cart, but I think cuff, but he was like more prepared.
Right.
So there's stuff here and there that I thought we could have done better, but it is what it is. And we had guest vocalists we had Cam Lee from Massacre. We had
Well, you did a guest vocal on the Bone Nor record for him, right?
Yep, yep. He Cam was like, I always support his stuff, and he supported mine. I'm glad he's doing good and stuff. Yeah, he had John McEntee and his wife Jill at the time.
Hmm.
They contributed. Ashton Zdenka from Estuary did some vocals. Jim Lapucci from Soulless, he did vocals. So it was a really good time. We added a lot of stuff, and it was a very stressful album to do. Uh, Kyle did his drums and took off right away on an incantation tour, left me and Art, and neglected to tell us he didn't put click tracks to fucking like stick tracks to some of his stuff where we had to physically like listen and make many punches just to try to get it right.
Right.
But it worked out, and yeah, I think Art. That's where me and Art really kind of clicked for sure.
Right.
And I could see where it was going to go from there.
Gotcha. So there you have it, man. There's all the Acheron full lengths, all seven of them. Uh, Additional stuff by the man himself behind the music, which was pretty awesome to hear all these stories and band members and produced where you did them. Like really cool to hear that stuff. And thanks for doing this.
Oh, no problem. A lot of this stuff's getting reissued and putting out again. So uh, make sure to pick it up. And Eddie, of course, he's he's the main man for the Vincent Crowley and the Acheron stuff. So go to Realms of Rock and pick up some merchandise to support him and me.
Like like we were saying before the video, who would have known a year ago that this would be where we were at? You know what I mean? Who knew I would have a distro, and who knew I would, we would be teaming up to sell your merch. So it was pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and not to mention he doing Acheron shows, which
Yeah.
will start next year. I'll be doing 2025 the Acheron God Can't Save You shows, and they'll be playing songs from Rites of the Black Mass and Anti God, Antichrist. So
Well, this
keep an eye
this
out for festivals and shows.
I know I want to get to that, but I want to rank these things first, and we're gonna go 7-1 at least for me from a fan standpoint. And please do not get offended. I love all these records. It's just how I would rank them. Number seven, I'm going Rebirth.
Mhm.
But I mean, I there's some great tracks on Rebirth, man. Church of One is good. So Molly is so good. The Kindred, I love the lyrics in the Kindred. Three of my favorite tracks off that record. Number six, I'm gonna go Anti God, Antichrist. Um, I love Fuck the Ways of Christ. How can you not? Shem Hemfarash, really strong. Blessed by Damnation, super killer. At least those are my favorite tracks off of that record.
Mhm.
Number five, I'm going Those Who Have Risen. Um, Life Force, one of my favorite tracks. Necromancy and Communion. Actually, just picked up the 7-inch. I sent you a copy of or a picture of the picture disc that I grabbed finally on that one. But that's finally in my collection.
Oh, nice.
Um, the intro to that Nosferatu intro, it's like a horror movie. I love the intro to that. Number four, I'm going Final Conflict, Last Days of God. Uh, love the Apocalypse. I love I Am Heathen. I love Blood Oath. Power and Might has a great riff. I love that one. Number three, I'm going Lex Talionis. Legions of Hatred. Slaughterization for Satan has become one of my favorite tracks. I love the riff in that. The Entity is always one of my favorite tracks of yours, which I know you've mentioned that you were in a band called Entity way back in the day, too.
Yes, sir. The
Uh, number
beginning.
two, number two, I've got Cultus Hasis. Every track on that is good, really. I mean, I love Satan Holds Dominion, Rapture to Divine Perversion, My Father's Suicide, which you redid for the Acheron record. Uh, I love Devil's Black Blood only because I feel like it's a tribute to the fans that you wrote. You know, I love it when artists do that and they pay tribute, pay homage to their fans. You
Yeah,
went into that track intentionally saying, "Now I want to give something back to the fans, let them know how much I appreciate them."
absolutely.
Yep. And then
Without
number
them,
one,
there would be no albums.
right? And then number one, obviously, is Rites of the Black Mass. To thee we confess, Thou art Lord, staple of your live set, right? I mean, it's one of my favorite tracks of yours. Ave Satana, same thing. Summoning the Master, um, all amazing stuff. But that record is so good, top to bottom. I mean, you can't go wrong with any of those tracks. So that's kind of how I rank them from a fan standpoint.
Right.
And
Yeah, my I can't really rank them because it's like it depends what mood I'm in. Where
it's
it's
like
like,
you can't like those records are like your kids. Like I'm sure it's really tough to rank your own records.
yeah, but it's I, I would say the stuff in the 2000s are probably my favorite because there's a lot of, I don't know, I mean, like a little bit more thought out stuff. But then again, I understand because songs tended to get longer. Where Rights had songs that were like 3 minutes, three and a half. We go to songs that are 6 minutes and 7 minutes and shit. So there's difference. And Rights, I really like doing these shows. Rights was never my favorite thing, but listening to it and like pushing stuff, that's where everything began. So it's a special place where even though maybe musically it wasn't like, I don't think it's very impressive or whatever, the way people embraced it and the time it came out and it just brings back memories. So it's high on the list too, even though I think I put a lot more into Occultus Hospice than Rights, but
Right.
it all depends on like when you look at it, and that definitely was a special time. And just like Anti God Antichrist, it was two times that the band got a jolt of electric and brought back to life.
Gotcha. So we know everybody knows at this point that you've pretty much reformed Acheron and are doing festivals next year. So, let everybody know what's booked so far and what's happening in the world of Acheron and the Vincent Crowley band right now.
Yeah, well, if you go to our like Facebook page, there's a lot of we got so much stuff booked I couldn't tell you off the hand, but we're playing in Steelfest in Finland. We're playing in Germany. We're playing in Brazil. Playing in Colombia. We are playing in Spain. We are playing in New York. Playing in Chicago. So we're if you go to our site, and I will post it on my Vincent Crowley YouTube channel, which I've been taking a time off of for a while because I've been dealing with all this stuff. But I will be back, and I'll let everybody know. But make sure if you haven't subscribed or checked in, do so the Vincent Crowley YouTube page. And yeah, we look forward to doing the Acheron, and I'm trying to book the Vincent Crowley band on a lot of these festivals too, doing double duties.
Yeah.
Um, I'm ready to fucking release some fucking shit next year,
There you go.
So
There you go.
it's going to be busy, and hope everybody comes out and supports it.
Awesome, man. Thanks for being here. This is really kind of a celebration of your catalog, what this video was. And just to let everybody know, like the ins and outs of your full lengths and, some of the history of Acheron and some of the shit that went down. So it was really cool for you to do this. I really appreciate it. You've been doing this, what, 40 years, Vincent?
Seems like a fucking forever, man. It's like, yeah, it's been like close or not. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the first band I was in, Entity, I think that was like 84, 85.
Yep.
So it's like, it's but, one thing I can honestly say, if anybody says, you only do shit for the money, I've been doing this for so long. I've always worked a full time job. I've always put money into the band. I always invested in the band. Um, I'm not pushed by a major label. We fucking do underground shit. So, you know, fuck off for everybody that says that. It's like I do this because it keeps me fucking kind of sane for the most part.
Yeah.
Um, One thing about I'm looking forward to these Acheron shows. I haven't been doing a lot of shows with the Vincent Crowley band. We've had some issues with getting booked. Um, now that I'm doing it, it's like I need to play live. Before I become a fucking corpse on a stretcher, I fucking gotta get this fucking darkness to the world.
So again, I think I've told you this before, man, but I'm a longtime fan of yours. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate the music that you've put out, and you're an absolute soldier of the underground, and it doesn't get much better than you. Knowing you this past year or so, I'm a bigger fan of yours than I ever was, and as a friend as well. So I thank you for everything that you've given all the fans all these years, man. We as fans really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate all you. I mean, all the work together, help you've given me. I also want to give shout to can't even mention names specifically, but all the people that in YouTube, people that are out in the metal scene, people that are in the satanic scene. We were having a conversation earlier. It's the people I deal with individually I appreciate more than just some kind of metal scene, because in the end, I'm not doing shit for a fucking scene. I'm not doing shit to fucking be popular. I do shit that I feel makes me feel good and makes me want to fucking put out. I'm an artist to a point. So it's like whatever I put out, that's what I want. But the especially on YouTube, fucking great fucking people out there have been supporting me, and fucking all the great channels and people, and it definitely helped light a fucking fire under my ass. And I hope I've lit a fire under some people's I've met asses too to fucking do shit.
I'm sure you have.
Um, let's the world is ours, grabbed by the fucking throat.
So let's wrap it up, man. Vincent, man, thanks for coming on again, and thanks for hanging with us on the Realms of Metal and celebrating the Acheron discography. Let us know what your favorite Acheron records are. Throw them down in the comments. What are your favorite tracks? Anything you want, throw it down in the comments. Anything Acheron related, and let us know what you think.
Don't forget Realms of Rock, and we got a new Acheron T-shirt for you
We do.
motherfuckers.
And we got more merch coming up into the shop. As soon as I load it, I'll have that on live by tomorrow. I'm not gonna tell you what it is. Maybe we'll do a separate video on that. But there's some killer stuff that Vincent just sent me that's going up live on the site, and it's gonna be available very soon. So check it out. Take care, guys. We'll see you guys again real soon.